friends, welcome back to our channel, and if you're new, my name is Abby. Today we are going to be talking about books. Yay! It has been a minute since I have updated you guys on what I've been reading. I think the last time we talked books was probably Murder, She Read in March. I'll go ahead and link that readathon vlog up here. It's just been a while. I was thinking a lot on like how I wanted to do any sort of reading wrap-ups this year. I've had a very mixed bag as far as reviews go, so there have been some books that I have read and honestly just didn't really like, and I didn't really want to talk about them because who wants to talk about things they don't like? I certainly don't. So today we are going to be talking about my favorite books of the year so far, my 5-star reads of 2022. I do think I should mention really quickly, if you hear a like humming, whirring sound in the background, I have a fan pointed directly at me because our air conditioner is currently having some issues and it's July in Florida, and frankly it's too hot not to have an electric fan just right at my face. Anyway, so far in 2022 I have read 52 books, which is great. I'm right on track for my goal, my loose goal to read 100 books this year. That means I'm right on track for that, which is very exciting. And of those 52 books, 16 of them have earned a 5-star rating. Now, of the 16, 6 were off of my physical TBR, 6 were advanced reader copies or review copies, and 4 were books that I had read before and read again and still verified that they are still indeed 5 stars. So I have 12 of those books to talk with you about today, my 12 favorites and the ones that I actually have physical copies that I can show you. So that is the plan for today. That's what we're going to talk about, and I'm really excited to chat some books with you. Let me know in a comment down below at any point during this video, number 1, if you've read any of these books that I'm about to talk about. Number 2, what your favorite book of the year so far has been. Have you had any new favorites, any 5-star reads? Let me know all the things I want to chat books with you in the comments down below. And now let's get into the books. So I think I'm going to start with this stack right here. These are the books that I have read before. They were not new to me this year, and all 4 of them, I would say as of right now, are amongst my favorite books of all time. This one I finished in January, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. Now this I know I have talked about on here before, multiple times I think, but I did end up rereading this one. I started it in, I think, November of 2021, and I finished it this January. It is 846 pages, and to me it is one of the most well-crafted novels I have ever read. This time through I did annotate and underline all of my favorite parts and my favorite lines, and it was just a really, really good time. So this is a historical fantasy novel that starts in 1806, and it's like 10 years in the lives of these 2 magicians. At the beginning of the book, there is a lot of discussion about why there is no more practical magic performed in England. All that is left is theoretical magic, which is basically just people talk about it, they write books about it, but no one actually performs it anymore, until they find Gilbert Norrell, a gentleman who lives in the country, keeps to himself and his books, and is a very talented practical magician. So throughout the story, he is hired by the government to help fight Napoleon. He takes on a student named Jonathan Strange, and it's kind of the story of them going from mentor and mentee to friends to rivals to enemies and back to friends again. There's a lot going on, and it's genuinely such a well-crafted novel. I loved it even more the second time through, and I do recommend the BBC adaptation of this as well if you want to check out the story without reading all of these pages. The audiobook is also fantastic. Narrated by Simon Preble, definitely recommend. I love this book a lot. Next up, I finished this one in February. That is Rook de Goo by Jenny Sauer. This is genuinely one of my favorite books of all time. I know I said that a minute ago, but every time I read it, I can't stop thinking about it. So. This is a soft sci-fi Cinderella retelling, and it follows Elle, who is a soldier who deserts her post in the first chapter of this book. She decides she's not going back to war, and she runs away. And she runs away to this kind of ragtag crew on this ship called the Adiran that's kind of falling apart, and she finds friendship and family and healing and hope, and they also uncover a plot to kill the prince. It is just one of the loveliest, coziest stories I've ever read, and I adore it so, so much. So yeah, I've already read this one I think like 3 times, and I wouldn't be surprised if I read it again in the not too distant future because I just love it. Next up is one that I know I talked about in my Murder, She Read readathon because I did reread this one in the month of March, and that is The Summer We Forgot by Caroline George. This is the perfect summer beach poolside read. I think if you're looking for something to read this July or this August, this is definitely the perfect one. This one does take place, it's like currently happening in the timeline of this because it's got dates of June and July 2022. So if you're looking to like read it now is the perfect time. This is a YA murder mystery set in the panhandle of Florida, and it follows a friend group that splintered and fell apart 2 years ago. None of them really remember exactly what happened that summer, but something happened and they kind of all drifted apart, and now 2 years later the body of their middle school science teacher has been discovered, and they're trying to figure out what memories they forgot, why can't they remember what happened, what's going on, who killed the teacher, all of these kinds of things. And it's just such a fun time. It's a murder mystery, it's a second chance romance, it's friendship and beach vibes, and it's just a great time. So definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a summer read. And then finally on this reread pile, this is one that's really special. This is Beyond Her Calling by Kellen Roth. Now Kellen, I have been following and reading her books for a very long time. She's one of my favorite Christian indie authors. Last year and this year, she's been going back and republishing her Chronicles of Alice and Ivy series. This is book 4, with new covers, updated stories. She kind of went back and rewrote them and re-released them. One of the beauties of being independently published is you can kind of do that. And they're so much better. I loved them as the original versions, but they're honestly so much better. Like, they're just the same wonderful things, but like again, it's great. This is, like I said, book 4, but these books don't necessarily have to be read in order. The first one is The Dressmaker's Secret, and I would recommend this entire series, especially if you're looking for clean, historical, I would say romance, but the first 2 books are not. If you're looking for something that's going to make you feel like you're watching a period drama film, but like happier, I would definitely recommend checking out this series. The series follows Alice and Ivy, they're twins, and it kind of follows them as they're growing up. This one in particular is about Ivy, and she is visiting with some friends in Scotland and learns more about herself and about her friends. It's also got one of my favorite romances in it. I love the couple in here so much, and I would definitely recommend checking these out. Like I said, if you're in the market for Christian historical feel-good times. There's definitely like hard stuff that the characters have to deal with, but on the whole, it's a good time. So yeah. So now we're gonna get into the books that I read for the first time this year and just absolutely fell in love with. The first one was actually my first read of the year, and it is, I think, it stands a pretty good chance of being my favorite book of the year. When I think of like my top 10 lists at the end of the year, I never include rereads on those or books that I've read before, and this is the second time through. Just because, I don't know, it's just for me, I want to rank the new books that I found throughout the year. And this was my first read of the year, and it stands a pretty good chance of at least, if not being on that list, being at the top. It's Echo North by Joanna Ruth Meyer. I was utterly enchanted and obsessed with this story. I read it in like 3 days. It was everything I didn't know I wanted. So this is a fantasy book that retells the Norwegian fairy tale, I believe is where it's from, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is one of my favorite underrated fairy tales. It's got a lot of Beauty and the Beast vibes, but like more snowy, I always think of when I think East of the Sun, West of the Moon. So this one follows a girl named Echo. She had an encounter many years ago with a wolf that left her permanently scarred and disfigured in her face, and a lot of the village people aren't the most comfortable around her because of it, but she's very loved by her brother and her father. At the beginning of the story, Echo's father goes missing, and when she's out trying to find him, she has another run-in encounter with the wolf who scarred her, and he promises to save her father's life if she will agree to go and live with him in his house beneath the mountain for a year. And that's the setup. That's where we go from there. So it is just an utterly enchanting story. I kind of had a general idea where I thought it was gonna go, and it kind of did, but then also it had such a fascinating twist in part 2. I don't want to say too much about it, but I may have screamed a little. It was the coolest thing ever. I've never seen anything like this done. It is not the gentlest or kindest book I've ever read. It's definitely got some dark moments, but it is just so good. It's so good. I loved it so much. The sequel to this is also coming out like in a couple of weeks, or not sequel, it's like a spin-off, but I'm so excited. I love when you fall in love with a book just in time for the sequel to be announced. Isn't that the best feeling ever? Not like this isn't a complete story. It is a complete story, but also there's gonna be more to it, and I'm so excited. Okay, next up, I have 3 from the month of April. I had so many fantastic reads in the month of April, but these 3 that I'm about to share with you were definitely among my favorites. The first was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. If you remember, I actually opened this in a Christmas book exchange. I'll go ahead and link that one up there. Dana sent me this from the Mouse Diva. Thank you, Dana. I knew I wanted to read this one in the springtime. Just look at this cover and tell me it doesn't have springtime vibes. Like, it's just screaming to be read in April, and it was the perfect time to read it. I absolutely adored this story. I loved A Little Princess. It was one of the first classics I picked up on my own time when I was younger, but somehow I never got around to this one until this year. I also listened to the audiobook narrated by Carrie Hope Fletcher, and she did a fantastic job, so I just, it's so enchanting. If you don't already know the story of this is about Mary Lennox. She moves to England from India after her mother dies, and she's a very awful child. She's not a good kid in any way, shape, or form. She's very spoiled. She's very cranky. She doesn't like people or talking to people. I always love a story where the main character becomes a better person. And this one's not just Mary. There's also a few other characters in here who learn lessons, life lessons about how to be a better person. And I loved every second of this. I really did. It's just full of springtime magic and friendship and flowers, and it just is a really good time. So I actually have another challenge going on for myself. I'm gonna do a full video about my TBR Jar challenge once I'm done with it. I am 8 books out of 10 into it. Basically, I took 10 of the titles that have been on my TBR shelves for the longest, and I put them on a spread in my reading journal, and also their titles on little strips of paper, and I put them in the jar. And my goal was to read them by the end of this year. And I actually had 2 5-star reads so far out of the TBR Jar, so that's very exciting. But the first one that got 5 stars for me was The Tale of Desperado by Kate DiCamillo. This is one that has been on my radar for a very, very long time. I fell in love with the movie years and years ago now, just because, you know, it's a fantasy about a mouse who wants to be a knight, and like, that was my jam when I was young. I remember watching the movie over and over again. I played the video game, all of that stuff. But for some reason, I never got around to reading the book. And if I'm honest with you, I'm kind of glad I didn't. The book is a lot darker than the movie. They definitely toned it down, calmed it down. But now that I'm an adult reading this for the first time, I couldn't put it down. I loved every second of it. This is about a mouse named Desperado, and it's also about a princess, a human princess, and it's also about a rat named Roscuro, and it's also about a scullery maid named Mary Sow, and it's a weird book, but it is absolutely magical. So basically the story kicks off when Desperado is different than all the other mice. He is born with giant ears and his eyes are open, and he is just kind of odd by mouse standards. One day he actually speaks to the princess and gets in big trouble with the mice for that, because you're not supposed to talk to humans. He gets banished to the dungeon, and our story kind of unfolds from there. It's a story about hard things and dealing with the troubles that life throws your way, but also being determined to be good in spite of those things, and to be faithful, and to be as brave and loyal as you can be. I loved The Tale of Desperado, I really did, and I'm so glad I did, because I was nervous, but I really, really loved it. The other book that I read in April, and I loved it so much that I had to go and buy a really pretty edition of it because I'm obsessed with this edition, is Emma by Jane Austen. I wasn't sure where I wanted to start with Jane Austen. I knew I wanted to read some of her things because I have so many friends who have been obsessed with her for so many years, and I've seen several of the adaptations and I really enjoyed them, so I knew it was about time I got around to reading Jane Austen. And of the adaptations that I have seen over the years, Emma has always been my favorite. I just find it really fun and funny, and I'm a sucker for friends to more romance, so this one felt like the right place to start. I actually listened to the audiobook for the most part when I was reading this, but I knew I wanted to own a nice edition. I have like a mass market paperback, but it's not in the best condition, and it's kind of small font and it's kind of hard to read, so I knew I wanted to get a nicer one. When I was at Barnes & Noble and they just released this like new leather-bound edition with the pink sprayed edges and the lavender cover, I was like, this is meant to be. It's meant for me. Like, this is my dream book, I'm pretty sure. And it's Emma, and I absolutely adored it so much. If you don't know what Emma is about, this follows 20-year-old Emma Woodhouse. She is the daughter of a rather wealthy man. Her older sister is already married. Most of her life is probably going to be spent taking care of her elderly father. She's happy in her life, but she's kind of bored. She decides she's going to take on a bit of a pet project in a young woman named Harriet Smith and take her from being a nobody to being a gentlewoman and marrying her off to a very wealthy man. She's like, I'm gonna make Harriet's life and it's gonna be great. And the hijinks and shenanigans ensue from there. And it's such a wonderful story. I absolutely adored every second of this, and this has definitely made me a Jane Austen fan just off the one book. So I'm very excited about that fact, and I'm very excited to have this edition. It is beautiful. Okay, complete change of pace and vibe. The next 5-star read I want to talk to you about is Mammoth by Brian McBride. This is honestly one of my favorite covers of the year. I am obsessed with it. The way that it's laid out with like the bird in the rock, and there's the jailbirds there, and the lighthouse, and the pine trees. It's everything. It's everything to me. I am obsessed with it. This is, let's see, how do I want to pitch Mammoth? It's Hardy Boys meets Indiana Jones meets Uncharted meets The Outsiders, set in the Pacific Northwest. I think that's the best way to describe it to you. This follows the jailbirds. They're a group of friends. They live in a town called Mammoth, Washington, and it's named after the two almost complete mammoth skeletons that were found in the area when the town was founded. One day a massive storm blows through and they discover a secret room in the lighthouse where they all hang out. And they discover some secrets in the town, and that some things may not be exactly what they seem, some people may not be who they say they are, etc., etc. It is such a fun adventure. The author has laid out this book in episodes, 7 episodes, and it really does read like you're watching a TV show. It reads like you're binging your new Netflix favorite, and this is season 1, and I want season 2 yesterday. It's adventure and friendship and doing what's right and learning more about the people that you live with and who they really are, and there's a lot of intense moments, but it's just so incredibly epic. I love every character well, not every character, but all of our POV characters I really love, the ones that we actually get to hear from and all of that stuff. The jailbirds are just so much fun, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. Okay, next up, kind of a similar vibe, but a different genre, Donna Vengeance by Ronnie Kendig. So this is book 2 in the Drossaran saga, so I'm not going to tell you too much about what happens in this one specifically, because it is book 2, I don't want to spoil the first one, but let me tell you something. Book 1 is Brand of Light, and I really liked, like, 95% of Brand of Light. I hate the ending. I still hate the ending, but not as much as I did. So I was nervous going into this. I did already have this before I started the first one, which was good, because the ending was yikes, also left on a complete cliffhanger. I was really curious to see if Ronnie could kind of bring me back into the feeling I had for the first 95% of Brand of Light, and it did. She did. Not only did she do it, she made me love it even more. I adored this book. This book was perfect. The pacing, the characters, the world building, everything in this was perfect. A perfect sequel. Like, I'm still mind blown about it. Also a quick shout out to Shadow of Honor, which is book 3 that just released. I have already read that one as well, and I didn't like it quite as much as this one, but I still really liked it, and I'm very excited for book 4 to see how this is all gonna end up and wrap up and everything. I'm really excited. So I won't talk too much about this specific plot for this book, but the series overall is what I would class as science fantasy. Like, it is very sci-fi, but to me it's got a lot of fantasy elements as well. I think if you love Star Wars, this is definitely a book series I would recommend to you. It's got very much that kind of lived-in sci-fi, almost a fantasy vibe to it, that's very character-driven, but there's also a lot of political intrigue going on, so it's like both at the same time. I think if you're a Star Wars fan, I think you would like this series if you're looking for something that would remind you of that. But basically the series as a whole follows Marco. That's him right there. And he, in the first book, he's what's called a hunter. It's like a very specific class of people. They have a very specific skill set, and they can track people by smelling their emotions. Sounds really weird, but it's actually a really cool like ability that Marco has and that the hunters have. It's very helpful in a lot of situations, but basically Marco in the first book is sent to track down a princess who has run away from the planet Dracero, the Dracaran saga. It's all centered around Dracero, which is like a planet that doesn't have technology. They're the only planet that's left that's not allied with the like Galactic Federation. I don't remember what it's called. The people that are in charge and have all the technology. There's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of romance, like a surprising amount of romance. But I do have to say that Roni Kendig, I say as if I've read more than literally just the series from her. She is an absolute master at two things, pacing, and also somehow, I still don't quite know how she does it. She'll have two completely, seemingly unrelated plot lines. In the first one, there were three seemingly completely unrelated plot lines. And so, like, things keep switching back and forth. We're, like, following this character for a while, and then we switch over and we follow this character for a while. And we're like, what do these two things have to do with each other? And then in the last, like, 50 pages, those plots just slam together and make so much sense, and everything suddenly makes sense, and you also have more questions because, like, what does all of this mean? And it's, I've never read anything else that's ever done something like this, and I am obsessed with the way that she did it in this book particularly. Again, couldn't put it down. I had to keep reading. I had to know what was going to happen, and I'm very excited for book 4 and how it's all going to wrap up. Almost there, my friends. We've only got 2 more, but this is The Thing About Leftovers by C.C. Payne. This is another one that was in my TBR Jar experiment this year. I picked this one up several years ago now at the library sale when it was like 50 cents or $1 because it's a middle grade and it sounded kind of interesting. I did not expect to cry like a little baby through like the second half of this book. This is a contemporary middle grade novel about Fizzy. She's 12 or 13. I can't remember exactly how old she is, but she's wonderful. But this follows Fizzy. Her parents are divorced and have been for several years. Her father is remarried, and Fizzy loves to cook. That's her thing. That's her safe space. That's where she feels happy, is when she's in the kitchen and making dinner for her and her mom. She lives with her mom now. And the story kind of kicks off when 2 bombshells are dropped on Fizzy. Number 1, that her mother has gotten engaged to her boyfriend, who Fizzy doesn't really like, and also that her father and stepmother are going to have a baby. She's also meeting new friends and finding out more about herself, and it's very much like a middle grade coming of age type story, but also having to deal with all of these family things, and it was just lovely. I read this in one afternoon. It was maybe like 2 or 3 hours, and I had read the whole thing. It just was an absolutely lovely time. It was very cozy. It made me cry a lot because it's very wholesome. Like, it could have gone very differently, and I'm very happy with the way that it went. Definitely a good time, definitely a pleasant surprise. I had no idea what to expect going into this, and I absolutely loved every second of it, so yay. So this is the final book I'm going to talk to you guys about. This is actually my most recent read as of filming this, which is part of why I'm kind of glad I waited the extra week and a half, because like had I filmed this a week and a half ago, the AC would be working and I wouldn't be, you know, melting like the Wicked Witch of the West right now. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be able to tell you about this book, and I feel like you guys will really love this book because I know a lot of you are like me and you love Hallmark Christmas movies. So if you're looking to celebrate Christmas in July, this is The Politics of Christmas by Drew Taylor. I think this video is going up on release day for this, so Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. I've been friends with Drew for a while now, and this is her debut novel, so obviously I love supporting my writer friends, but I really didn't know what to expect going into this, and I was utterly delighted the entire time. I could not stop smiling. This is like everything I love about a Hallmark Christmas movie, but also there's like actual Christian representation in here. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. This follows the story of Stella and Lucas. They were engaged many years ago. Lucas proposed when they graduated high school, and they were gonna get married, and then Stella got accepted to Harvard and left. And it's been, I think, 10 years since then. Stella has a very successful career as a campaign manager, and her mother is not doing so well, so she agrees to fly home for Christmas. And while she's there, she runs into Lucas. He's a high school teacher at the high school they went to. He coaches the soccer team, like that kind of stuff. He's always been in the town, taking care of her mother too, which is so cute. He's like, his relationship with her mom is the cutest thing ever. I love them so much. So basically, she comes back to town. He's still there. They have weird feelings about each other because, you know, they were engaged. She left. He feels a lot of hurt about that. She feels a lot of guilt about that. And it's very much Hallmark Christmas. If you love the Hallmark, like, second chance romance vibes, seriously, pick this one up right now. You will not be disappointed. It's set in a small town in Mississippi. It is just so much fun. There's banter and humor and perfect Christmas vibes. I'm already so excited to read this when it's not 90 degrees outside, because as much as this gave me the Christmas in July feels, I think it's gonna do that even more when it's actually Christmas time. This was such a surprise delight of 5 stars. I didn't think it was gonna be so perfect for me, but it was perfect for me, and I loved every second of it. So that is it. Those are my favorite books of the year so far. Like I said at the beginning of this video, let me know in a comment down below, what are your favorite books of the year so far? Have you read any of these books? Are there any that interest you? Let me know all of the things down below. I hope that your reading year has been amazing so far, and that you are finding all sorts of adventures to go on in the pages, and I will do my best to not let it go so long till we talk about books next time. Okay? If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below for more Disney and bookish magic, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future uploads from us, and I will see you guys next time.